Mike will be with us here in just a minute. We're trying to see if this works differently on my phone than it did on his, and that he can actually get the comments and the callers and things like that. So hopefully it'll work out. We're glad you've joined us. And tomorrow's show will be a pre-recorded show. I'm going to attempt to find another show that we did around power persons and possibly even pseudo solutions, and post that so that it stays in line with what Michael's talking about. I'm having to meet with a surgeon tomorrow, and Michael's going to go with me, and so we'll give you more information on that after we've talked to the surgeon. Just hold the space, and otherwise, we would love to hear from you if you call in. I'm not sure at what point Michael is on the pseudo solutions. We will, as soon as he completes editing it, I will put it up on the website, so you'll be able to get it. And so we are glad you're here. I did get caught up with the shows on YouTube. I was a couple days behind again. And so Thursday and Friday shows are now on YouTube, and they're also on Podetize. You can pick them up either place. And if you're not sure how to get to either one of those, if you just go to Why Again and click on the radio icon, that's, the speaker, and it says Mindshifters Radio in the middle. And if you click on that, then you can go over to the right-hand side and click 2025 if you're wanting to see, let's say, this last week. And then you click on April, and all the month of April pops up with the summaries of the shows. And then at the bottom of each, so at the bottom of the first hour, it will say YouTube for first hour, and it'll have a link. Or on our Podetize player, and it'll have a link. And then it'll have a summary of the second hour, and it'll say the YouTube link for second hour, or on the Podetize player. So you can pick the links up there as well, and that may be easier. But on YouTube, I have created different, what they call playlists, and I wasn't sure if people would be looking for Power Person or if they'd be looking for Pseudo Solutions. So I created a playlist for either of those, and then also for the month. And so as I'm uploading the MP4s, which is actually just an MP3 audio with a picture of us and Dr. Tim on it, but as I'm uploading them, then on Michael's hour, I am clicking that they are to be included in either of those playlists. So for the month, for Power Person, or for Pseudo Solution. So whichever playlist you click on, you should be able to find it. And I am going to turn this over to Michael. He's getting his earphone here. Pardon us. And I'll turn it over to him. And I'll go listen on the other phone.
Awesome. Thank you, dear. Appreciate you. And welcome, everybody. I'm delighted that we get together and carry this conversation forward about first century Aramaic forgiveness, and then more particularly the power person dynamic from the codependence to interdependence workshop. I would like to open the space. It seems there have been lots of questions. So I've got another piece of the codependence dynamic that I want to share, but first I'd like to open the space for questions and see if there's anybody out there that has a thought that they'd like to share. If there's anything that didn't make sense or did make sense, or anything you'd like to share about your experience of the series what we have just completed. And I think I'm going to add a piece or two. I'm just contemplating that to that worksheet, so it will be updated on the website at any moment that we do it. But if you're out there in listener land and you have any questions, any comments, anything to share about what we've done in the last several days with the Power Person worksheet, I would love your feedback. I would love your input. I would love to hear your questions. Actually, I'm using that word love very incorrectly. I would be delighted to, and I need to discipline myself to use that word love to represent what it truly represents, and that's only one thing, and that is human life. That word has been so misused and has left us in such a mess. And so if you're out there in listener land, you can put a comment in the comment section. Although, Miss Jeannie, I'm on Jeannie's phone. The last couple of days, I could not access comments. I could not access callers. And so we decided to shift over to Jeannie's phone. And I saw the comment light up, but I can't access it. So it looks like we've got a similar problem. So I may not be able to take callers. I may not be able to do anything with comments. That's strange because Jeannie, when she was using her phone, was able to look at comments. So not sure what's happening there, but it certainly confounds things.
That comment was just me saying how welcome to see if you can see it.
Yeah, but I can't access it. So can you still access comments there?
Yep, and Carrie said she can see them too. So it must be with the studio and not the listener app.
Yeah, it is. So that means I can't interact with you. And if you have a comment, you can go ahead and put it in. And if it's one for me to address, then Jeannie can share it with me because she can see comments on her phone. Unfortunately, we must have we're actually using a different app than you're listening on. You're using the Needle listening app. We're using Needle Studio app. So there's some sort of a problem with the Studio app that it won't let me look at who's on the show. Normally I can look at the list of who's signed in. I can normally look at comments, and I presume that I'm not going to be able to bring anybody on as a caller. So bummer. But if you have a comment or a question on anything we've talked about with that, you can put it in the comments, and then Jeannie will share it with me if it's something that I need to address. So we're going to make a slight turn, and have you ever heard the comment? Have you ever made the comment? Have you ever been subject of the comment? The honeymoon is over. Anybody ever heard that said? Well, what does it mean? Well, my offering is that comment means that you are in the perfect relationship, that it is not a love relationship, but it is one based in matching bags of garbage. A relationship based in matching bags of garbage is one that has a potential to become the most powerful love story that's ever been written. It's interesting that because most of us as human beings live our whole lives in projection, we live our whole lives looking at perceptions in our minds. We play out and play out and play out the dynamics in our minds over and over and over again, whoever we're looking at. Now, I would offer that a true love story is one in which each person in the relationship reaches the space in their own lives where they experience themselves as the active presence of love. Again, a love relationship is not one where I'm in love with you and you're in love with me. Because as you've noticed on a minute's notice, the honeymoon may be over. Why? What happened? And what is a true love relationship? Well, I have some really bad news and I have some really good news. The bad news is nobody has ever loved you. Nobody's ever going to love you. You've never loved anyone. You're never going to love anyone. And God doesn't love you. That's all a misuse, a fraudulent use of the word love. Now, what's the best definition of the word love? My offering is hold a newborn child and bypass whatever's going on in you to the best of your ability and tap into the essence of the child. Human life. That's what love is. You've got one. Now, when people say, I fell in love with them, what they really mean is I found someone who resonates this space where I'm connected to who I am as love. And it's wonderful. Now, you'll notice that the world has bastardized that experience. In fact, one song title that comes to mind was a pretty popular tune. A lot of people were going around humming and singing this and probably still know the words to it. You only hurt the one you love. And love becomes twisted. Love isn't something I can do to you. Love isn't something you can do to me. Love is what we are. When we meet someone who resonates who we are, we're confident with them. And the world turns that into the words, I love you, rather than, oh, thanks for putting me in touch with the truth of who I am. And that creates an attraction. But if the relationship ever comes to the point where someone pronounces the phrase, the honeymoon is over, then these two people are no longer resonating the active presence of love in each other. They're no longer taking delight in extending that love to and for each other. But all of a sudden, something different has resonated in the mind. Now, if you've ever been the object of the phrase or have used the phrase in a relationship, the honeymoon is over, you probably remember exactly what you or your partner did, right? You remember exactly what was going on. And guess what they did in order for that phrase to be pronounced? You or your partner violated an important goal that the other had for their power person. That's what the honeymoon is over means. You or your partner violate an important goal that the other one had for their power person. Remember the moment? Most remember it as the moment where their partner spoke to them like he or she had forgotten. It's like they didn't even know who I was anymore. Like, who were they talking to? Certainly they weren't talking to me. They must have been speaking to someone else when they said that. Well, that's right. That's a correct assessment. They were speaking to someone else, but they didn't know it. let's take a look again at how the mind works. You know, if you've never driven a car and you have no idea where the brake is or the gas pedal or where the key goes or where the gas goes, how to get the oil up, the car's not going to run very well. It's not going to last very long. You're going to have to learn something about how it works to keep it functioning properly. Well, let's look at how the mind works. First of all, when we say, I saw you, what that really means is I have brain cells in me that resonate to your presence. And out of those brain cells, my mind builds a picture of you. And I see your face. I see your body. Now, that's what the average person would say. But remember, healing can only happen when we're in truth. Now, let's listen to Einstein on the topic of that last statement that I just made. Here's what he said. On such things as matter, we have been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy. Energy whose vibrations have been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses, there is no matter. Now, maybe you know better than Einstein. I don't think so. I've got a science background, and I know that I don't know better than Einstein. So I'm going to accept Einstein at his word. You know, the guy who was Jewish in Germany during the insanity of the Third Reich didn't have a lab that he could do experiments in, and yet he came up with the most profound equation about the operation of the universe, E equals mc squared, that wasn't, he could never even test it. Someone, if I remember correctly, someone in Australia who did the experiment and went, oh, Einstein was right. So I'm not going to argue with Einstein. There is no matter. What we have called matter is energy whose vibration has been so lowered as to be perceptible to senses. So is my mind telling me the truth when I look at you and see a body? Obviously, it's not. I mean, if you want to truly function as a true human being and you want to heal, you're going to have to give up all the lies. I mean, it's a convenient fantasy to say, I see you, but the truth is, I don't see you. Your energy field is there. It resonates. Light bounces off of your energy field, and the information about your energy field is carried to my eye, and my eye carries that electrical signal to my brain, and my brain resonates information and presents to me a picture. It converts the thoughts, the mind energy resonated by you, into pictures. And those pictures are painted, I would offer, on the inside of my eyeballs when I say, I looked at you. I'm not looking out through my eye. The eye literally is, in truth, in the true energy system, the eye is nothing but an antenna. And just like the antenna on the roof of your TV, it's tuned to certain frequencies, and it brings information in. Now, you can no more see out through your eyes. This is one of the frauds of the world. You can no more see out through your eyes than you could look inside the wire that leads to your TV antenna and survey the neighborhood through the wire that leads to your TV antenna. The antenna receives a signal. It's fed into your television or your radio or whatever it is, and your radio converts that into images and sound. It's no different with this antenna called the eye, and you can't see out of it. It's a one-way valve. So before the honeymoon event, let's move back in this relationship to before anybody had the thought the honeymoon is over, and recognize that in relationship to your partner, you have built brain cells. out of experience with them. And when those brain cells fire, a familiar experience happens. And the experience that the mind presents is related to the person who's in front of me. But remember, one of the features of the honeymoon is over is, who are they talking to? It's like they're not even they don't even know who I am anymore. What just happened? Well, the mind organizes information in files, so to speak. And the files that the mind organizes keeps all information in a file with the topic of that particular information. We've talked about the file folder effect before, and what really happened is somewhat akin to the file folder effect, only perhaps a little deeper. And remember, we shared that the file folder effect says that when two files fire together, they wire together. So you've probably heard me use this example. If you haven't, then you won't have the brain cells for what I'm about to share. But you will have when we're finished with this example, because I'm about to tie together two files in your mind that, unless you've heard me do this example before, have probably never been tied together. I know that you have brain cells in your mind for these two things that I'm going to speak about. And once I speak them, they will be inextricably wired together in your mind. So I'm going to ask you, if you would, not to think. Now, you could hang up the phone and not be subject to this, but when I'm finished with this statement, they're going to be wired together in your mind. You don't have a choice about that. Again, unless you just disconnect. But don't do that. Stay with us. It'll be worth it, I promise. So if I say don't think about a purple alligator, what fires in your brain cells? Well, there's purple and there's alligator, and they've never been wired together before, but guess what? Now they're wired together. If I started the Ryce show tomorrow and I said, hey, everybody that was here with us yesterday, don't think about a purple, what would move in your mind? Alligator. They're linked. This is what happens in the mind. Neural connections happen. Now, remember that when you're in relationship with someone prior to the honeymoon is over, the basic information that fires inside of your partner is information related to you in a file that we would call you. But once the statement is made, the honeymoon is over, they will no longer, or they will not be experiencing, at least exclusively, images based on their experience with you, but they'll be experiencing you through a set of brain cells that previously have not been related to you. God, Michael, what does that mean? Okay. So the image they look at, the instant that the pronouncement was made, the honeymoon was over, at that moment where something happened, and they were like, they're not even talking to me. It's like they don't even know who I am. Remember, that's a feature of the honeymoon is over. So the image that their mind is showing them of you is not coming from their file on you anymore. Because what you did was you violated a goal that they had for their power person. An important goal that they had for their power person. And once that happens, and this is literally the instant where everybody says the honeymoon is over, this is the core of what it means. It means that they opened their power person file and stuffed you in there. Now, this is an energetic dynamic that is not controlled by the mind. It's just, if you violate an important goal they had for their power person, stress goes up. And when stress goes up and that power person file is open, you are now linked to that power person file. I told a couple of people I was going to be making an announcement today. So the other morning as I was, and I'm still not, I apologize to those who I said I would send the codependent sheet to, but I'm not quite finished with it yet. But as I've been working on it, I had the guidance a couple of mornings ago that I need to create another worksheet. So there's a new worksheet coming down the pike that I've never done before. And it's going to be basically, how did I get in and how do I get out of my power person pile? Because if people don't ever work through those dynamics, it's a relationship destroyer. So once you violate a goal, and people say, gee, we had this wonderful relationship. We rolled along for 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 years and everything was wonderful. And then one day they couldn't stand me anymore. All they did was yell at me or reject me or whatever the dynamic was. You see, before that event happened, most of what energetically contributed to their brain's image of you, the brain cells firing, were brain cells that they had actually built in relationship with you. But once you get dumped into the power person file, you are now dressed with the emotional baggage, with the unresolved issues, and the trauma that person has experienced with the power person. And they are not talking to you now. They are back, and of course it might be you who, your partner violated the goal you held for a power person. And this is just an unconscious dynamic. I mean, it runs the world. If you've ever watched, I've worked with people over the years, people who say they were married for 50 years and their marriage ended the second year of their lives together. They're still together. They still live in the same house. They're not married. They don't even know who each other is because here's another thing that happens. Once one person violates the goal held by the power person, or pardon me, held in regard to the power person with their partner, and they are linked into their power person's file, it's not probably going to be long before vice versa, before that second partner violates a goal of the other. And now each one is playing out of. If you've ever watched the movie, this is a good example of it, is the movie The War of the Roses. You'll see a couple of times in there where, they almost get out of their power person files and remember, oh yeah, you're the person I cherished and honored and wanted to be with for life. And then one of them does something that triggers that goal again, and bang, they're right back to the point where, they kill each other. I offer, this is the root of all violence in relationship. This is the root of all separation. This is the root of every fight, every conflict. So once you violate an important goal that your partner held for their power person, you're going to be dressed in the emotional baggage of that power person because they're back in full-blown relationship with their power person. And they're not talking to you anymore. They're talking to their power person. However, because they're focused on you, now, I could make this clearer if we were in the classroom and they had a whiteboard. That's why I love to talk with my hands and have the whiteboard. But let's imagine you've seen me probably draw the stick man with the files and had little square boxes, and here's the file. So let's imagine I'm in the front of the board. I've got the stick man on the board, and in the head I've got a file, and it's marked. Let's say we've got Harry and Bill, and Harry and Mary in relationship. So this is Mary on the board, and there's a file in there for Harry, and Harry fires brain cells, and a picture shows up in her mind, and there's Harry, and she just loves Harry. And then down in the depths of the mind is a file on her power person. Her power person maybe has been dead for 25 years, doesn't matter. If she's never gone in and cleaned that file out, and Harry violates a goal after 25 years of marriage that she held for her power person, all of a sudden that power person file is activated. Now, get the picture. There are the two files in the mind. In their normal state, the image that she sees of Harry comes from her file that she built in relationship with Harry. The day he violated a goal that she held for her power person, he was dumped into the power person file, and now her brain's image of him comes from the power person file. It looks like Harry. He's maybe a little uglier, a little nastier because of the twist of the hostility and fear with the power person. But that part of the mind's stored information is now used to build their brain's image of their partner. And the behaviors will come from the file on the power person. And this is such a key thing to understand. And ultimately, to work through. Now, the focal point of the power person worksheet was to unravel the power person dynamic in yourself. And Jeannie, I'm looking at the comment bar, which I can't access, and it says that there are 19 comments in the
I was waiting for you to take a breath.
So I was wondering if there are any comments there that I need to address.
Okay. So I'm not sure if they can hear me, but oh, yeah. So the first one was Carrie, and she asked permission. Her father's passed, but she asked permission to do a worksheet as if she were him.
Powerful.
He had big issues about World War II. And let me roll back up to it. World War II was his issue, and the rage that he had about people dying and seeing young soldiers die as he flew them out of battle. I'm trying to understand the best way to process his feelings about this war. I suggested she watch Hacksaw Ridge.
Yeah.
She said, I see my messages aren't coming through very clearly. So the point is, with his permission, I'm doing worksheets on my dad, who passed on 30 years ago, as my power person, and the rage that he had about the war and the terrors of people dying. And I'm just looking for some input on the best way to process that war. And then let me go ahead and read the other one so I can get out so I don't echo. The other one is Joe Bryson. And he said that, let me roll back up. He violated the goal for his power person. And so something outside of him really did violate it. And so something outside of him caused the issue. And I said, no. I said, you may have violated the goal, but it was what was inside of him that you triggered. So what was inside him was the cause. I said, you weren't cause, you were just a trigger.
Okay. See, that's a summation of 23 comments. Oh, okay. Awesome. Well, I'm glad the comment board is rocking. I wish I could see it, but so Carrie, my first piece of input would be that your dad was never enraged about watching young people die or what happened in the war. Your dad had a history and the energy of rage in his mind. Certainly, knowing some of the places where he projected it, i.e. into the situations of war, you could do specific worksheets in that regard, but I would just invite you to remember that, the reason he could ever say, or any of us could ever say, I'm enraged about this or that or the next thing, is because there's rage in the mind. And if there's rage, unresolved rage in the mind, then that rage can be projected into my brain's image of anything or anybody. I can go into a fit of rage about the dog barking down the street. I can go into the fit of rage about the woman that we heard about yesterday that got bit by a dog. I can do a fit of rage about what's happening in the government. I can go into a fit of rage about what, my sister did, my mother did, my father did, my children did, somebody on the other side of the world did. I can go into a rage about stubbing my big toe. I can put it anywhere and project it anywhere. So while there are specific things that he linked it to, my invitation would be for him, and then you being probably an inheritor of some of that rage would be to recognize for each of you that it was not a matter of being enraged about anything, but the simple fact that there was rage there. And that's probably part of the family genetics. And I certainly hold the space. I recognize it, been there, done that. I had the father that I could tell the same stories about. And so I certainly breathe with you for our fathers and join with you in recognizing that any rage that we experience, that it's time for us to own it, stop projecting it into our stories and our brain's image of anything, and recognize that it's simply ours. Breathe, smile, forgive. Let those energies break up and let loose in us to free the whole family system from that energy. So that would be my input there. And I deeply apologize that I can't access the comments to be able to read what you're saying. But Miss Jeannie, if you've got any other feedback, I see the comment list is growing. That's awesome. And then, sweetie, if you would come back and read the comment that Joe made again. I was kind of processing what Carrie had shared, so I really did not fully get what Joe had said in his comment to be able to address it properly.
So you were talking, I think, at the time that he wrote this about nothing outside of you is cause. That's what's inside of you. And he wrote, I violated their goal. So something I did outside of them violated them. Something outside of them caused the issue.
No, Joe. That's just the old, you got to give up your membership card in the One World Universal Religion of Blame. Yes, you were the trigger by violating a goal you held for them. But it was the untoward energy they held unresolved in their power person file that was their issue, that was the problem, that was the response that came back at you, and of course wanted to convince you that you were the problem and you were the cause. Yes, we are triggers for each other. There's the idea of the holy relationship from A Course in Miracles, is that we can ultimately be the space of active present love and be there for and with each other. But strictly speaking, you have to discover you as the presence of love by bypassing and forgiving all forms of hostility or fear. And I have to do the same. If we enter into a holy relationship, basically that's what the commitment is about from the Healing Through Relationships workshop. And you remember the last paragraph of the commitment is, and of course, if you live the first part of the commitment, if there's anything to come up, it's going to come up. So the last paragraph in the commitment is, if anything unlike love comes up, I'm going to hold us in my heart and listen. As we each learn to speak, experience, and be responsible for our own realities. So if you were the trigger for this person, that would be where this part of the commitment would apply. I'm going to ask you to be responsible. Yep, I got it. I violated a goal you had for your power person, and I can see that you've got a whole lot of old rage and pain around that power person. And I triggered it, but you're not the cause of it in any way, shape, or form. If there were nothing in them in the way of an untoward energy in their power person file, and you violated a goal that they held for their power person, they'd go, oh, gee, I remember when I had the goal just like this one that you just violated for my power person. And I remember when it was upsetting for me, and now I've cleaned that up. So, thanks for showing me that again. It shows me that I've done a pretty decent piece of work in that regard. But I realize that you're just my trigger. And wonderful piece of music. I'll suggest everybody go to YouTube when we finish and put a search in for Alanis Morissette, and the song is Madness. Just an awesome piece that goes like it fits right in the middle of the book. Why is this happening to me again? And the basic, and it's clear that Alanis Morissette, and or the first of all, for her to just be able to sing the song, and then for her to be whatever part she was in writing it, I don't know. But the melody line basically is, and now I realize that when you're not in the room, my madness still goes on. And I should thank you for being my most generous trigger. When one moves out of the one world universal religion of blame into ownership and responsibility, actually steps into adulthood, then the people who can trigger them, instead of puking on them, instead of, when they go into that ultra stress state, remember, we do whatever our power person did that we hated the most to that object of attention. If I've worked through that, then, as Alanis Morissette says in that song, and I should thank you for your most generous triggers. And Jeannie's back with it.
Try one more time and see if you can pick up. Joe's on as a caller. I told him I didn't think it would let you.
No.
Okay.
My apology, Joe. I would really love to be speaking with you right now. And I will call you after the show. But unfortunately. So this tune, Madness, is just a profound personal responsibility piece of music that just so powerfully demonstrates, yep, here we are. And, here you've triggered me. But, and of course, the key melody line there is her realization that, but I realize that madness goes on when you're not in the room, that it's about me. It's not about you. So, Joe, whoever that power person was, it was never about you. Now, notice that we can come up with all kinds of complicated stories to try to convince somebody else that they're responsible for what's happening inside of me. I mean, the mind is genius. We see this especially in the realm of alcoholism. The alcoholic drug addict is a genius at being able to turn everything around and make it about blame of someone else, because that is the basic dynamic that happened with their power person. Their power person, generally speaking, the power person of the alcoholic was an expert at making the child feel like they were responsible for what was going on in the adult's mind, in the adult's body, in the adult's nervous system. And of course, no child has ever been responsible for what's moved inside of their parent. The fact that that energy is inside of the parent is why that energy moves. And it's got nothing whatsoever to do with the child, except that the child is the trigger. And so as we wake up and bypass the insanity, it's time for a different game. In fact, give me just a second here. I'm going to switch over. I'm just looking up the words to Madness by Alanis Morissette. Because it's just so, I've been most unwilling to see this turmoil of mine. The thought of sitting with it, i.e. my own stuff, has me paralyzed. with this prolonged exposure. In other words, basically, I hadn't thought of this when I started the show, but this is the honeymoon is over song. I mean, this is it exactly. So the second paragraph says, with this prolonged exposure. In other words, we've been together long enough and you just triggered me. And what's the exposure to? She says it so beautifully. With this prolonged exposure to mirror, in other words, I'm looking in a mirror when I'm looking at you, and averted eyes. How many people have ever been in a relationship and all of a sudden the stress is up and the chips are down and you don't even look at each other? Why? Averted eyes. That's exactly what she's referring to in this song so powerfully. I feigned that I've been waiting such mileage for empathizing. In other words, I could be changing this game. And now I see the madness in me is brought out in the presence of you. And now I know the madness lives on when you're not in the room. And though I'd love to blame you for all, I'd miss these moments of opportune. You simply brought this madness to light, and I should thank you. Actually, a one-word change there would have made it more powerful. You simply brought my madness to light, and I should thank you. Oh, thank you. Much thanks for this bird's eye view. Or thank you for your most generous trigger. Now, let's see if you've ever been in this one with the once the honeymoon is over has been pronounced. It's been oh so all too easy to cross my arms and roll my eyes. You ever been in that? The honeymoon is over and here's this person rolling their eyes at you and cross. The thought of dropping all arms leaves me terrified. What she's saying here is my power person dynamic involves terror. And if I stop blaming you, I'm going to have to go inside of me and look at my terror. And nobody wants to go there. That's why 2,000 years ago, when a group of disciples said to Yeshua, what do we need to do? And he told them they had to go in and deal with their own stuff and free themselves of all hostility or fear. Literally, half of his disciples left. And they left, and I could imagine they were rolling their eyes, and their arms were crossed, because here's what they said: too hard a saying, who can hear it? That's what they said to Yeshua 2,000 years ago when they said, here, do my work. Go in and clean up your own mind. And many people follow him in name only. You might remember the passage where he talks about, many will come to me saying, didn't I do miracles in your name and I fed the poor? And look at all that I did. And he says, get away from me. You're not with me. What do you have to do if you're going to actually do the work of Yeshua? You're going to have to take up your cross. Whoever the author is, whoever the person is speaking the lyrics in this song, practice it with your partner. Whoever's speaking the lyrics has to realize that the reason they're rolling their eyes, the reason they're crossing their arms is because they're tightening their own physiology and don't want to look at what's going on inside of them. That's where the whole power person dynamic comes in. So once again, the song goes on and says, and now I see the madness in me is brought out of the presence of you. Once again, she says, now I know that madness lives on when you're not in the room. And though I'd love to blame you for all, I'd miss these moments of opportune. You simply brought this madness to light, and I should thank you. And then her next thought, I mean, she covers the whole, the honeymoon is over dynamic so powerfully. I hadn't thought of it in this context. I'd have to give up knowing and give up being right. You inadvertent hero, you angel in disguise. So each time that you trigger that level of upset in someone, you're the hero. You're the one presenting the opportunity. Now, who wakes up and takes advantage of the opportunity, and who stays stuck with their eyes rolled and their arms crossed and holding tightly to their membership card in the one world universal religion of blame? Oh, thank you for your most generous triggers. I'd have to give up knowing and give up being right. Oh my God. Whew. What would it be like? And I'm asking everybody that's listening right now, what would it be like in the current conflict that's going on in your life if you gave up your knowledge that it was about them and that you're right and you were able to breathe and you were able to cancel the goal you held for them? Drop inside yourself and look at your own madness. How different would the world be if every one of us could do this? And it's interesting, I share this fairly often, um, and it goes back to the 17th century. And the priest's name was Francois. Let me just put this in. Francois Fenelon. Now, this is a piece of was not written yesterday for you or anybody else. This is what was written somewhere around the end of the 17th century, the beginning of the 18th century. This guy was, obviously deeply into doing his work and inspiring others. He was actually a Catholic archbishop background that turned from 1799 to 1800. He was in that time frame. And he understood what needed to be looked at in order to do the real healing of the heart, the unconscious, as Yeshua prescribed. And here's what he says. He says, and put this in the context of Alanis's words. I got my arms crossed and rolling my eyes. I know it's all about you because I don't want to look at this. And this is what Francois Fenelon said. Every one of us would have to look at if we're actually going to clean up our lives and heal. As the light increases, we see ourselves to be worse than we thought. We're amazed at our former blindness as we see issuing forth tiles crawling from a hidden cave. And the call button just showed up. I'm just reaching over to see if there's any way I can turn on the caller. And unfortunately, I can't. We've got a defect in the app. So if you'll put your question into the comments, Jeannie will share them with me. We've got just a couple minutes left. Anyway, let me finish what Francois Fenelon said. He says, we are amazed at our former blindness as we see issuing forth from the depths of our heart a whole swarm of shameful feelings like filthy reptiles crawling from a hidden cave. We never could have believed that we had harbored such things, and we stand aghast as we watch them gradually appear. But while our faults diminish, the light by which we see them waxes brighter, and we're filled with horror. Bear in mind for your comfort that we'll only perceive our malady when the cure begins. That was written 300 years ago. He knew what the human dilemma was. Who was it that said most men lead lives of quiet desperation? They go from the quiet city to the quiet country and satisfy themselves with the death of muskrats. Got to kill something in order to feel because they're so drugged, so shut down. So what this archbishop was speaking of and what needs to happen when the stress is up and the chips are down and the honeymoon is over is that the real difficult work of Yeshua, if one is going to heal, has to be picked up. Because this relationship, literally the exact same relationship that can, will, and maybe has sent you to hell, i.e. shown you your own dilemma that you cross your arms and roll your eyes about, that's inside of you, but you're blaming them. The very same relationship, when it uses a commitment and turns to support, is the one that will carry you to heaven. But this is the work that's been resisted for centuries by all but the most dedicated. This is the work that caused many of the disciples to depart, like they just left. Too hard a saying. Who can even hear it? And what the scriptures say at that point is, from that time, many of his disciples went back and walked no more with him. They left. And unfortunately, that's the condition of the world today. Don't make me look. That's the condition of most quote unquote love relationships. Is they're based on a resonance, an attraction through matching bags of garbage. And that's wonderful. You know, the workshop Healing Through Relationships, and it will be part of the intensive we're going to do at the end of May here in Virginia, if you're ready to take your work to the next level. That workshop, when I originally did it, was called Healing Your Relationships, because I thought there was such a thing as a diseased relationship in the early days. That's going back 45 years ago. Shortly after starting to teach Healing Through Relationships, the realization came that there are no diseased relationships. Every relationship is a perfect creation. Every relationship will reflect back to you exactly what you need to heal. Because the purpose of life and the purpose of relationship in the early phase is to kick you in the limitation, to show you what you're holding on to. If when the honeymoon is over, two people say, you know, I think we need to find something that will support us in going through these layers, because we really do have this connection and this attraction, and we really do share this presence of love. We have this resonance in our souls. But are we willing to deal with our insanity? And what is that insanity? It's anything that your mind, your nervous system, your body are capable of generating that is less than love. And that's your work. And it's your work only. And I appreciate the fact that you've joined us today, and that we've gotten to have this, unfortunately, one-way conversation. And we're going to hold the space that you are ready to have the best year yet of your eternal life. It is an awesome gift to give the world. The world is desperately in need of it right now. You have the capacity to give that gift, and I join you in doing that. And tomorrow's show, by the way, we've got an appointment at Radio Time. So tomorrow's show will be on Podbeam. It'll be a pre-recorded, exciting show, and we'll look forward to seeing you the next day. Blessings. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.